Hello, and welcome to Pivotal Moments, a podcast sharing, exploring, and celebrating stories of change through mindset and wellness and their impact on relationships, both to ourselves and others. We are all agents of change and have the power to pivot at any point, at any time. I'm your host, Siria Gutierrez, along with my co-host, Melissa Robena. On this episode, we discuss the topic of bullying. We learn the various types of bullying, its impact on children, and the long-term effects on our mental health. Dāli Rivera joins us in this discussion. Dāli is the creator of the Anti-Bullying and Diversity Academy, a series of online mini courses and in-person workshops for parents, guardians, and educators to learn how to teach children how to prevent and stop bullying, and methods to teach how to embrace others' differences as well as their own in order to reduce bullying. All right, so bullying, that is today's topic, Melissa. What do you think?
Why is this topic so important to you?
You know, I actually have a couple cases that I deal with that have to do with bullying. And so I spend a lot of time, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know which way to look at it, suing the school district here in Clark County. And I do have a couple bullying cases that have come up, and it's just so fascinating to me to see the range and how the school district deals with some of these situations. So that, and of course you hear about, bullying and how it is now with cyberbullying, and just, it feels like it's much more present than I think it was when we were growing up.
Well, and I think when you talk about cyberbullying, that was obviously something that wasn't around when we were children.
Because we're old.
Because we're old as shit. But the thing is, it's when I think of bullying, I think of like the typical, like, shoving behind, the school gymnasium or something like that, or, physical touch. But I think that there's more that encompasses bullying than just that. And, I don't have kids, but I know that there's a lot of parents out there that have to support their children that are victims of cyberbullying or bullying at school. But I'm also really interested in, those that were bullied as kids, us as adults. Like, how does that shape, or is there any long-term effects of bullying, and how can we experience that as adults?
Well, right. And so, Dustin Diamond passed away not too long ago. He played Screech on Saved by the Bell. And so that's kind of who I think of as, the scrawny kid who's getting beat up, shoved into lockers. Like, that's the stereotypical way that I think a lot of people have thought about bullying. And also Mean Girls. Right. Little girls are so fucking mean, y'all. And we've been little girls.
We're vicious.
We are vicious, and we're smart, and we're clever. And there's just these subtle ways. And so I think we talked about it on a previous episode where I was like, did my friend and I end up bullying somebody like that one time when we didn't want to go to her soccer party or whatever it was? And so when you reflect back, there were times I had bad behavior. Was I a bully? Would I have that label now? I don't know. I personally don't think so. I could see where other people were definitely
It's all about
bullies.
Perception though, right?
Oh, completely. Right. I mean, I think I asked Matt that question this morning. It's like, or maybe it was in my dream. I don't know. I've been having some weird ass dreams, y'all, of just, you're the villain in somebody's story and you may not even know it. Right. And so as adults, as you're dealing with these traumas and being unpacked, how do you deal with that? Is there a way for you to heal that? I'm not really sure, but I'm super excited that we have someone with us today to join in on this conversation and hopefully shed some light on all of these things. So Dāli, thank you so much for being here. Dāli is an anti-bullying advocate. She's the founder and creator of the Diversity and Anti-Bullying Academy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, ladies. I'm excited.
Yes. So, all right. So let's start with, what is the definition of bullying?
Thank you for asking that. You're the first person that's your first question. And I love that because most people completely forget this. So it's pretty much an unwanted actions and behaviors and language towards you. And usually it involves a imbalance of power. And so in layman's words, it's pretty much things that are done and said to you that make you feel bad. Usually the way that I explain it to children is,
thank you. I was just going to ask. Imbalance of power as an adult. I'm like, yes, I understand that. How does a little kid understand that?
Exactly. And I think that's what's wrong with like determining whether an incident at school was actually bullying or teasing or something else. But what I tell the children is, look, when you're being bullied, it's always happening all the time, either by that one person or by that group. Always to you, it's happening over a period of time. And it always makes you feel bad. It makes you feel either unsafe, it breaks down your morale, it makes you feel fearful, scared, and you might even feel like you need to avoid that person. That is what bullying is. When you're being teased, it's different. Usually teasing involves friends, it involves laughter, like genuine laughter that means well. And, even when, say, the three of us were out and about, and then you saw me trip and fall, and then the three of us are hanging out several days later at the lunch cafeteria for lunch, and then say like Melissa or you bring up, oh, remember when Dali fell and she hit her nose when she came down, and everybody's like, ha ha ha, and it doesn't feel bad. It's just like, oh gosh, yes, I remember. I will never do that again. For now on, I will always look at that step before I enter that room so I don't fall again. So that's the difference. Teasing is meant more for fun and maybe like a reminder of, hey, don't do that again, without actually saying, hey, don't do that again. Mm-hmm. And bullying is more like, oh my gosh, I got to run away from this person. They're always attacking me. It makes me feel bad. And that's the distinct difference.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm glad you brought up teasing, because I feel like as you were talking about teasing, that's what I've experienced a lot of, right? Like I have a weird ass name, and I can tell you I was teased all through school, and now I don't get teased so much, but I do get are you sure that's how your name's pronounced? Kind of, microaggressions. But yeah, there's teasing and laughter. And so I like that distinction because it is lighter, right? And you go, okay, yeah, you're embarrassed because you're a kid and you don't know any better. But even as an adult, like we do a lot of teasing. We have a close group of friends and we spend a lot of time teasing each other.
Oh my God.
All the time.
Relentlessly.
But I feel like there's a level of love in there.
Yeah.
And that you don't have that with the bullying definition that you gave, right? Like you feel bad about yourself and you want to avoid these people.
Exactly. And that's the key point. When you're being teased, it's usually by people that and you're comfortable with. And you also mentioned something there that I always tell parents to talk about with their children, the microaggressions. Children don't know what a microaggression is. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. Children don't know the definition of that, but they see it and they feel it and it happens to them and they do it back. So I have a segment in what I teach in my online course of keywords, like teach these kids these certain keywords and like self-deprecation. So we mentioned laughter in a scenario, right? I used to try to deflect bullying and harassment at work by laughing it off. And unfortunately, and you're in the legal field, that sometimes that can be used against you. So I encourage parents to teach their children to not laugh it off and just be serious when they don't like something and just say, hey, I don't like that. The other thing too is if you're being bullied, think of it this way. You have to tell the person like, hey, I really don't like that. Can you please stop? Okay, you've now established how you feel and what you want. If that person respects your boundaries, they will respect it and follow it and not do it again. But once they break that, they continue, then now you're really, for a fact you're being bullied because you've already told them to stop because it's happening over and over and over. It doesn't make you feel good. So when you have small children, they probably don't have that confidence to go and say, hey, please stop. So what you can do is, I always tell children, tell someone, anybody who you trust, who you think might be able to be your ally. And if you have to go with that person and tell them, hey, you know what, you were doing this to me. Can you please stop? I don't like it. Or, you can just tell a teacher or an adult, and then that adult can address it to that child, because so many children live in households where that is their environment. So to them, it's normal. And they come to school or church or the playground or wherever, and they treat people like that, not knowing that you're bullying. And it's with tone, with sarcasm, with, all these little microaggressions that kids know that don't feel good. but they can't explain it because they don't have that knowledge of that word, of that key word. So I ask parents, look, don't underestimate your children. They're super smart. If you teach a child a very complex word and you break it down to their level with examples about things in their life, they're going to understand completely what you're saying, what that word means. So for example, let's take the a microaggression, like backhanded compliments is one of the key words, right?
Mhm.
So, and this is something I saw a teacher do
Like, you
years
look so
ago.
skinny in that.
Yes. Uh-huh. Oh my gosh. Or like, oh, you're so pretty for being chunky. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why
You
can't
have
I
such a
just be
pretty face.
pretty? Yeah,
I've
exactly.
gotten that one. I'm like,
Yeah. Uh-huh. I get the oh, you are so articulate for being an immigrant that had to learn English.
yes,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
one's huge.
it is, but the one I wanted to point out is the teacher that I saw do this, that heard her and saw her do this to a child. She said, "Oh my gosh, you're not the sharpest tool in the shed, huh?" And I thought, "Oh, this is the third grader you're talking to. Why are you saying that?" And not all, I'm not saying all teachers do this. I'm just saying this one particular teacher did do this. And sometimes we say things because that's how what we grow up saying, like hearing, right? And we repeat it. So be mindful because those are very negative comments. And imagine if you are an educator or a parent or somebody of influence to that child, and they're constantly hearing, "You're not very bright, are you?" Or can we speak Spanglish on this podcast?
Sure, a little bit.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay, so like when an adult recently said that his mom would always say, "Oh my God, es que so burro," and he said he's in his 40s, and he was like, all these years, I realized that I thought I was dumb because she always called me un burro,
Yeah.
or
Which is a
just like
donkey.
right donkey, yeah. So it's just like common cultural things that are said, sometimes even as terms of endearment. Like for example, oh, my chunky monkey, or in Spanish is ay mi gordita. And so they you hear this over a long period of time, and you start identifying, and sometimes you identify it as that person, as that gordita, that chunky person, but then it starts feeling negative, especially when they say it when it's said in anger or in a conversation that's not very positive. So it's a delicate situation because a lot of people tell me, "Well, I didn't mean it that way." But the point is, how did the receiver take it? And if the receiver told you, "Hey, please stop calling me that," then you should have, because that's the right thing to do, because they're asking you, they're telling you. And then if you want to ask why, then yeah, ask why. It's up to them whether they want to share or not. But those little ways of eliminating that type of language can be very helpful, and it can also be very helpful to the child if you explain it that way.
That's really interesting because, the chunky monkey, these things that we grow up thinking or hearing as young children then become our reality as adults. And so thank you for talking about some of the long-term effects of childhood, of bullying. What have you seen as the relationship between bullying and mental health?
Oh, wow. Thank you for asking this question. It's so good. I have seen so much when people don't really understand until their mental health is suffering pretty bad, that certain ways that they were treated, over time, actually manifest themselves in many different ways at a later age. And people who are bullied a lot, they either become the aggressor or aggressive as an unconscious way of defending themselves immediately right from the bat with anybody, or they are very privy to being targeted in other ways. So for example, if you have a child who never learned to stand up for themselves while bullying or while being bullied, then they become the target for other types of abuse. For example, relationships like verbal abuse, social abuse with friends, or others, cyberbullying too. And so all of this accumulates over time, and people tend to have low self-confidence, not realizing that it came from, say, certain events back in their younger years or whatever. And they need help. And mental health to me is, or should be, just like one of those things that we do often for our bodies, like, for example, a yearly exam. Although I believe that mental health should be at least once a week, honestly, because we all have some type of trauma and we all need to unravel and like kind of allow somebody who is, not biased to take a step into what we're dealing with and tell us, okay, this is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? Like, how do you think I can help, or that you can help yourself? How do you think, like, what solution do you think that would work for you? Because that's what therapists do, right? They don't tell you how to fix your problem. They ask you because you're the one living it. So if somebody has been bullied for years and they go to a therapist and they start, maybe mentioning a few things about what happened, then maybe they can help them. Like, you know what? I feel like maybe this moment might have been significant for you. So how can you start healing? How can you move forward? Because some of us, we get stuck in that for so long without knowing it. And that affects the way we deal with people, the way we treat ourselves, the choices that we make, even in our careers. Because I remember I was bullied as a child. And for years, I played it small because I was so used to making myself invisible or small so that I would not be the target, not just for my bully, but for another bully or somebody else that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. So you wanted to stay small to protect yourself.
Right.
Sounds
Yeah.
like, you're doing that. So then I'm curious, because you did experience that internal feeling of not wanting to play it big. You do see bullies, they grow up, right?
Wow.
We don't all stay kids. And so how do you deal with a bully, say, in your workplace? Because I can tell you, I've got two attorneys that I am for sure certain they're not like my specific bullies, but I can't tell the difference. Are they just assholes or are they bullies?
Yeah.
But hearing you describe how they feel, like there's one of these two, I don't want to interact with him because I know I'm going, like, I can feel my heart rate going up. I can just feel it. Like I get so tense and I'm just expecting the worst because he's just always such an asshole. I'm like, well, are you doing it because I'm a woman, because I'm Latina, because you don't think I'm smart? Like, I don't know. So I'm just curious what your take is on the adult bully, growing up, or the child bully growing up.
So we're talking about the child bully growing up. Okay, so how do we deal with them? So I get this question a lot because a lot of people do experience bullying in the workforce. So first and foremost, I always tell people, look at your HR's policies on harassment, because bullying usually falls under the harassment guidelines at work. And I'm sure you know this, and you probably have mentioned this in your podcast.
Yeah.
But because when you go to HR, you want to make sure that what you're about to report falls under a certain guideline and what protections you have. I'm always like that person that does the research before I do something, just to make sure I have everything, squared away. So
you're speaking Melissa's language.
You're speaking
right now.
my language.
So yeah, but aside from that, I always tell people document, because a lot of times there's bullies who are very sly. And they don't do it in a very overt way. It's not like, punching you in the face where everybody can see it and then you have a bruise to show proof that, hey, look, this is what happened. Some of them, the microaggressions, right? So sometimes it's kind of like we get gaslighted because they turn that around on us and they start making us think that we're sensitive or crazy or that I'm misinterpreting stuff. So if you keep a journal of what's going on and write the details in, and say it's going on for several weeks or several months, go over that again. And you're going to see you're not crazy. Because if you see that same thing written over and over and over, those same type of aggressions, then you're going to, number one, just like, you're going to be more confident. You're like, okay, I really do need to do something. Because now I'm seeing, like, I've written all of this the past few weeks or months. I'm not crazy. So then here's where you have to take a hard decision and make a hard decision and decide, do I approach this person and tell them, hey, you know what, for the last sentence, and then you can refer back to your first entry. They won't know that you're, writing this down, but say, it was like back in February 2nd. Since about February 2nd, or since that week of February, you've been doing this and this and this to me. And, I feel like I can't really work with you like that. So could you please stop? And, or you, however you want to say it. I always tell people, make sure that there's somebody that knows about this, that you're doing this. And it's even better when you have a witness. But of course, when you have a witness, like another coworker, then that feels like an attack on them, right? But you know what? The point here is to take care of you, not to make them feel good, because they've already made you feel bad this whole time, whether they knew it or not. So always, once they already know, then that's, the ball is on their court now, right? Now, what is he or she going to do? Are they going to continue that behavior? And if they continue that behavior, you continue documenting, and you go to HR and report it if you have to. Okay. But if you have nothing to document, no true real examples, then HR is going to just say, okay, this is just two coworkers that don't like each other. And you have to, I think, also express, like, how is it affecting you, especially in the workforce? Because when you go to HR, they're going to go to legal, right? That's the first thing that they think about. It's like, okay, there's this going on at our company. Now we are legally committed to or obliged to create a solution, because that's what we have in our guidelines. So we have to follow it, right? Yeah. So yeah, it can get complicated. But if you feel like this person is somebody that you can speak with and say, hey, you know what? I really don't like it when you call me that, and everybody else is even forgetting my name, and they're calling me this other name, and I feel like it's going to stigmatize me. So can you cut it off? You can also that's if you have somebody who's kind of like, easy to talk with, although they're being, the bully.
Yeah, that seems hard, right? Like if they're
very
that person. And so, when I'm hearing you talking, and I appreciate your examples, I'm thinking, okay, well, this applies if you're in a big corporation that has an HR department. And, sometimes there are a lot of people that work in small businesses. So I'm in a small business. And what's funny is that the person that I'm thinking about works at a different law firm. So the person that I would have to go to, and usually we have to, is the judge. And everything that you said is totally right. Document, because I just can't go to the judge and say, hey, this person isn't being civil, right? But I have to bring it in with whatever else they're doing and just have it on the record, documented. But even then, if and when I do those things, I still have that just like internal feeling of just like, I don't like this person at all. And I don't think there's anything that he can do to change my mind, because our interactions have been so sour. And I'm just like, dude, like, calm down.
Yeah. It's really hard, because sometimes that you can approach somebody even if they're being an a-hole. But then I've experienced that, where I was like, I really need to tell this person how I feel, because they need to cut it out. And I don't expect them to cut it out anyway. But the point is that I need them to know from me that they need to stop. And I've been in that situation. I brought in one supervisor. It was so awkward. I was like voice quivering and all inside, but I did it. And this person, and the person kind of chilled a little bit, but it was almost like this person, like, that was part of their like, it was just so embedded in that person to be that way, not just with me. And I mean, I think that person had like he had an unconscious prejudgment about me for having been young. I was a very young sergeant in the military. So I think that even he didn't realize how bad his judgments against me were, that it was affecting our work together. And I think that everybody else could feel it too, every time he would walk in and talk with me, or approach me. So yeah, the point here is, you have to have the courage. You cannot expect the problem to go away if you say nothing. Even when other people watch it, that can create so much angst, or so much worry and stress, that others might not feel courageous enough to speak up and say, hey, you know what, you're not talking to that coworker right, that's wrong. And This brings me to another point, that when the victim doesn't see anybody stepping forward, especially when the victim is a child, and over time they start thinking, well, nobody's willing to put themselves out there for me, so I must deserve it. And that hurts.
That was actually a question I had, which was, as adults, you're right, we can seek counseling, but as adults, we have that power. We can utilize our voice for good, to heal, to make things right. As a child, like you mentioned, we may not feel comfortable enough doing that. So as a parent, I'm not a parent, but I would imagine that has to be extremely frustrating for those that are listening that are parents that may believe that their child is being bullied, and maybe that child doesn't even feel comfortable telling their parent that they are getting beat up, or they're being bullied at school. What resources are available to parents to help their children that may be experiencing bullying at school?
So I always recommend parents to check out the guidelines at school first, because if you're going to report something, you need to know what policies or guidelines it falls under, and you need to use their rubric. And a lot of parents don't know this, right? So if you go to your school district website, there should be somewhere on there where they've posted that policy. You can also call the front desk person, the assistant principal, the principal, the teacher even, and they can give it to you. Usually they send this form every first week of the school year, and you have to sign it. It looks like a lot of jargon that you don't want to read. It's boring, and it has all these codes for the policy number. But parents usually just sign away and send it back with their kids. But you need to read it, especially if your child has been attacked before. And the second thing you need to do is make sure that once you find out if the incident matches what they have in there, like the descriptions and all, of course, the documentation, always important, and let the school administration know. There are so many parents that come to me when things have gotten really, really bad and it's been going on for a while, and they're like, they just don't care. We've told the teacher that this kid is doing this to my kid. And while that might be true, the problem here is, again, the keywords. They didn't explain it well enough. You have to be descriptive. You have to actually explain what is going on. And there's social bullying, verbal bullying, cyberbullying, and physical bullying. And all of them can happen at school. And most of them are not subtle. So again, back with the examples, if you come to a teacher and you say, teacher, that kid is being mean to me, the teacher is going to ask, well, okay, what happened? Well, he said that he doesn't want me to join their group to play softball. Okay, so a teacher and any adult is going to be like, okay, well, they have the right to do that. But let's imagine it's social bullying, which is something that a lot of people don't know what it means,
Yeah, I just wrote that down. I'm like, social what?
Yeah. Social bullying is when you pretty much do something like sabotage a relationship, or you hurt somebody's character to remove them from their community. So let's imagine that Joey and Sarah always become team captains, and they have both agreed to not let Dāli play with them. So Dāli always wants to play, and she's always with the rest of the classroom outside, hoping to get picked. But they've decided to never let Dāli play. And not just with softball or anything like that, but also in reading groups and other things. So then Dāli's being socially bullied, because what's happening here is that they are removing her from her community just because two people decided to do that. So if Dāli goes to the teacher and says, teacher, they don't want to let me play, well, she's going to say, well, sorry, honey, I can't force them. You see the difference? There's something else behind there. So it's so important for parents to ask questions and to give examples of how it happened, and children too. So if you explain something like that to a child, I think that they're going to remember. Sorry. Do you hear that?
You do.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Let me repeat that. Sorry. My dogs. So if you repeat, what was I saying?
About being descriptive.
Right. So being scripted is extremely important, because if you don't give children those examples at their level, like the one I just gave you of, something that is relatable to their world at that age, then they're not going to remember. They're not going to understand what social bullying is. Because I mean, even adults right now, they're like, what is social bullying? I don't get it. That's just something made up, right?
Well, in that example that you gave us, though, the two kids decide to exclude Dāli from playing, right? How do you go about getting that information and realizing, oh yeah, no, they teamed up and they made a decision that for whatever reason they don't want to let her play? Like, how do you even get to that point with little kids?
You just ask a lot of questions. You can tell them, can you reenact it for me? Can you tell me, like, pretend that I am Jimmy and Sarah. What did they say? And then you can play it out like that if possible. But honestly, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy. As a parent, some kids are not very verbal, but some kids are very, very good with explaining every single detail. So it's a matter of knowing how to speak to your own child. So I always tell parents, look, take 15 minutes of straight up, no phones, no TV, no music, and have a conversation. Don't let your child say to you when you ask them how their day went. Don't let them say to you, it was fine. Every child says that. Every child. But ask
A
them,
lot of adults too.
oh yeah. Yeah. So, the way that you can pull that information out is by saying, you know what, today I got up and I had a long day. It felt really heavy because I had X, Y, and Z to do. What about you? What did you have to do? And that's not a yes or no answer, right? They have to say something. Well, I went to school. Okay. Well, what was your favorite part of school today? Recess. Well, why? What was it? Did you play a sport? Did you meet a new friend? What happened? And then they have to tell you. So 15 minutes, because studies find that parents are not really spending 15 minutes of wholeheartedly like one-on-one conversations. It's more like, hey, go wash the dishes. Did you clean your room? Did you take out the dogs? Let's go and pick this up together. Or what do you want to watch? And then, yeah, they might spend 4 or 5 hours watching like a marathon of Marvel movies, but they're not communicating. They're watching the TV. So a lot of parents confuse or misconstrue that type of quality time with true quality time, which is getting to know one another and having true conversations.
Wow. That's so sad. But I'm trying to think of, did your parents ever spend 15 minutes having a conversation with you?
I wouldn't be in therapy right now if I was.
My mom did, but I think it was because I was the oldest of 6 and she's a single mom. So I think she took me more as like her buddy, that like she shared everything with me. But you know what? I'm not a perfect parent, because there's been days, especially during this pandemic, where I'm just working all day long. And then I look up at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't fed my children, And so one of the best opportunities that everybody has is the dinner time. And in Latin culture, that's easy for some because it's kind of like part of our culture where you all sit down to eat together and you have a conversation. So one of the things that makes dinners exciting, especially with younger kids, is when you have, say, at least 3 questions during the dinner table time to ask. So one that I used to do when they were little, my kids were little, was tell me, what was your favorite part of the day? What was the least liked part of your day? And if you could change anything during your day today, what would it be? And man, they used to they couldn't wait till it was their turn, because we would go one, and it's just 4 of us, my 2 girls, my husband and I. So everybody would take a turn and they just could not wait to answer. And oh my gosh, chatterboxes. Even the one that didn't really speak very much, it would bring out her little person, and she would just share, because kids want to feel validated, heard, and seen. And if you carry that habit throughout their childhood until they leave the nest, you'll be able to learn so much from them.
I love that. I think everyone wants to be validated, heard, and seen. And what I've really enjoyed about this conversation is I've learned a lot, about bullying, social, cyber, physical, and verbal, and that it not only takes place in schools, but also in the workplace as well. Do you know of any legislation that's been passed or is in place to help protect those that are being bullied?
That's such a good question. Somebody just recently asked me this. There are many legislation. There are many pieces of legislation being worked on, but they vary from state to state. Unfortunately, the federal government has not taken up the simple thing of defining bullying nationwide because it's such a complex thing.
Wait. The last first lady tried to take it up.
Yes,
right?
but
okay. I'm just saying they tried, but it wasn't very good. And I'm not a Trumper at all, but I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what happened with that because all I saw was a slogan went up, and then that's all we heard.
But that's a good point, right? A slogan of "Don't bully" is not going to be enough.
No, definitely. And you know what, parents listening or adults, if you care about your communities and your schools, you have the power of your voice and you have the power to go to any school in your school district, whether you have children there or not, whether you have children at all or not, and tell them, hey, what bullying programs do you have at your school, or what rules or guidelines do you have at your school that are keeping kids safe? Because I noticed that X, Y, and Z happened. But even the state level, you can write your representatives and say, hey, you know what? I've researched the way that protections are written for kids about, for against bullying. And I feel like we need something stronger. So every single state has slightly they have their own legislation. Some don't have any clear ones at all. And this is a huge problem because kids need the protections. One of the reasons why it's so hard to create legislation for it is because of the definition. Because of that confusion of, well, let's not throw around that word bullying. Just because somebody says something that you don't agree and they keep saying it over and over and over to you is not bullying if they're just sharing their opinion about something. You see this a lot in social media platforms. And I always tell people, you have the power to report a bully or a troll, but don't go and quickly labeling just anything bullying. That has worked so much against the work that needs to be done to protect children against bullying. So look up your own, one of the easiest things to do is call up your local representative and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm in your district. Could you guide me as to where I can find the laws against bullying in the state? And sometimes they'll say, you know what, we don't know, we'll get back to you. And they'll ask you for your number, your email, and they'll send you the information. That's their job. And don't be intimidated about calling any local office, any representative, whether it's your senator, your congressperson, your mayor. They're there for you. And that's the best way to get the most up-to-date law if they have any in that state.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Dāli.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate that.
I do that all the time. Some of them actually know me by first name. They're like, oh, it's you again.
Not a bad thing though, but you're right. That's what they're there for.
Mm-hmm.
So wonderful. Go ahead. Did you have?
I want to add, because people get so intimidated about calling legislators. The person that picks up the phone is just an aide or an intern who is being trained on how to help that office. And that's why a lot of times they will just write down your question, your information, and get back to you. So, hey, call them and you'll be helping them with their training.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, if you don't want to call, if you go to their website, most of them have a website, you can fill out a form and they will send you an auto response and then they'll send you an actual response.
Yep, definitely. And it's actually fairly quick. I think the longest one has taken me to receive has been 2 weeks, which is still pretty darn good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's really good. Okay. So we ask all of our guests who are on our show 2 questions. So we would like to do that now. Reflecting back, what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell little Dāli that she's going to be way smarter than she realizes right now, because she's going to grow out of her lack of self-confidence and realize that she can learn anything if she just wants to.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. So, second question is, looking forward, what is one hope or wish that you have for yourself on your current journey?
Oh man, I really hope to touch so many communities, because the information that I give can save so many hardships in life. And, one of the reasons that I do this is because when I was young, my mom saw the shy child that I was, and she was probably worried about me. And she always told me, listen to old people. If you listen to them, they will save you so many hardships. So I'd like to think I'm not that old person. And I'm okay with that. I love it, because it feels so good to have all this information in my head and be able to give it to those who want it.
Wow, that's awesome. So if our listeners want to learn more from you about bullying and how to get in contact with their school districts and report and schools and all that, you've got your YouTube show, the Dāli Talks show, right?
Yeah.
And you've got your workbook, and you've got your academy, the Diversity and Anti-Bullying Academy that you offer. You're doing a lot of good work in the world. Thank you so much for that. And we'll be sure to link all this stuff in our show notes.
We want to hear from you. What bullying have you experienced or observed? What did you do about it? Let us know in our private Facebook group, Pivotal Moments HQ. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR production. Thank you for listening. Remember, it's never too late, and you're right on time.